Imagine waking up in a hospital after an accident with no memory of your life. Do you think you could piece together your identity from fragments of your past? This is the story of Muni, a woman whose life was shattered by a tragic event. As she lies in her hospital bed, surrounded by unfamiliar faces and a husband she does not recognize, she struggles to reclaim the memories that define her. But little does she know, a shocking revelation awaits her, one that will change everything she thought she knew about herself and her family. Join Muni on her journey of rediscovery as she confronts the shadows of her past and the secrets that have kept her captive. Muni opened her eyes slowly, feeling the soft pillow under her head. The room was quiet except for the soft humming of machines beside her. She felt tired, confused. Where was she? Why did everything feel so strange? Just then, a man walked in. His face lit up when he saw her awake. Muni, he said, his voice full of relief. You're finally awake. Muni stared at him. She didn't recognize him at all. Who are you? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. The man's smile faltered. I'm Xander, your husband. Muni blinked. Husband? She tried to remember, but her mind was blank. I don't remember, she said, her heart racing. Xander sat down beside her, his eyes full of sadness. You had an accident, a bad one. The doctor said it might affect your memory, but don't worry, I'll help you remember everything. Muni didn't know what to say. How could she have forgotten her own husband? She looked around the room. It was a small hospital room, clean but cold. She felt lost. Over the next few days, Xander stayed by her side. He told her stories about their life together, about how they met at a village festival and fell in love. He showed her pictures of their wedding, her in a beautiful white dress, smiling happily. But no matter how hard she tried, the memories didn't come back. One night, after Xander had gone home, Muni lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Something felt wrong. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the accident than Xander was telling her. The next day, she decided to ask the nurse about the accident. What happened to me? She asked as the nurse adjusted her pillows. The nurse hesitated. You were in a car accident. They said your car went off the road. It's a miracle you survived. Muni frowned. How did it happen? The nurse looked around as if to make sure no one was listening. I don't know all the details, but some people are saying it wasn't an accident. Muni's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? The nurse leaned in closer. They're saying someone tampered with the brakes on your car. Muni's blood ran cold. Tampered with the brakes? That meant someone wanted her gone. She didn't tell Xander what the nurse had said, but the suspicion grew in her mind. Who would want to hurt her? And why? The more she thought about it, the more questions she had. Xander continued to take care of her, but Muni started to notice things she hadn't before. He always seemed to avoid talking about the accident, and there were moments when his smile didn't reach his eyes. She tried to brush it off, telling herself she was just being paranoid, but the doubt lingered. One day, as Xander was out getting food, Muni decided to go through his things. She felt guilty for snooping, but she had to know the truth. In his bag, she found a small black notebook. At the back of the notebook, there was a newspaper clipping. The headline read, Local woman in critical condition after mysterious car crash. Muni's hands trembled as she read the article. It described the accident in detail, but there was something strange. The article mentioned that Muni had been driving alone, but she remembered Xander saying he was in the car with her when it happened. Why would he lie about that? Even after Muni had been discharged and started settling back into their home life, she couldn't shake the feeling that Xander wasn't telling her the full truth. Determined to uncover more, she decided to start investigating on her own. Muni started asking around the neighborhood about the accident. While most people didn't have much to share, an elderly woman named Abriwa Ode mentioned overhearing an argument coming from their driveway on the night of the accident, right before the car sped off. Just as Muni was about to ask for more details, she noticed Xander pulling into the driveway. She quickly thanked Abriwa Ode and hurried back to the house, worried that Xander might realize she had been snooping. One afternoon, Muni overheard Xander on the phone, his voice trembling. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said, tears running down his face. "I was scared. She was going to leave me, and I couldn't let that happen." Muni's heart raced. Could he have tried to get rid of her because he was afraid she'd leave him? It made her feel sick to her stomach. How could the man she had married be capable of something so terrible? She wanted to scream, to run away, but she was trapped. She had no memory of her past, no idea who she could trust. For days, Muni pretended to go along with Xander, pretending she suspected him of nothing, though her mind churned with confusion. The more she tried to piece her memories back together, the more fragmented they became. Who had she been before the accident? Was her marriage always this dark? Late one night, unable to bear it any longer, Muni waited until Xander was sound asleep. She quietly slipped out of the house and went to visit Abrewa Ode, hoping to get more details about the argument she had overheard before the car sped off. Muni was convinced this was the missing piece that would help her solve the mystery. Muni knocked on the door, her heart thumping in her chest. Abrewa Ode opened the door, her face wrinkled with concern. "Child, what are you doing here so late?" she asked. Muni took a deep breath. "Abrewa Ode, I need to know the truth about Xander. Did he really want to get rid of me?" The old woman gestured for Muni to come inside and lit a small lamp on the table, which cast flickering shadows across the room. Her eyes bore into Muni with a mix of unease and sorrow. Abrewa Ode hesitated before finally speaking. "Yes, there was an argument that night," she began slowly. "But it wasn't Xander who was upset. It was you, Muni. I saw you that night, furious and shouting. You were saying you couldn't do it anymore, that you needed to leave, that your reputation was at stake. Xander, he was calm. I heard him say that your mask was about to fall, and by tomorrow, everyone would know who you really were." Confusion swelled in Muni's mind. Why would she have wanted to leave Xander? And what mask could he have been referring to? She had no memory of this argument, no memory of the rage Abrewa Ode described. Had her accident really been a result of her trying to run away from him, or was it something deeper? Suddenly, a flash of memory surged through her mind. She remembered sitting in the driver's seat of a car, gripping the wheel tightly, tears streaming down her face. Xander's voice echoed in her ears, begging her to stop. But she hadn't stopped. She had pressed her foot harder on the pedal, almost running Xander over. Muni gasped, her hands trembling. I I was driving that night," she whispered, the realization crashing over her. "It wasn't Xander who tried to eliminate me. It was me." Abrewa Ode nodded solemnly. "Yes, my child, you were the one driving. The accident was not something Xander did to you. You did it to yourself." Muni's mind reeled. How could she have forgotten something so crucial? The guilt weighed heavily on her chest. She had spent weeks blaming Xander, questioning his every move, convinced that he was the villain in their story. But all along, it had been her. She had wanted to escape the marriage, to break free from a life that felt suffocating, even though she didn't remember why. With a sinking feeling, Muni rushed back home, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. When she arrived, Xander was waiting for her in the darkened living room, his eyes unreadable. "You remember now, don't you?" Xander's voice was calm, too calm. Muni nodded, her heart pounding. "I was the one driving. I tried to leave you." Xander's lips twisted into a thin smile. "Yes, you did. But you didn't think I'd let you go that easily, did you? Muni's breath caught in her throat as Xander stood up, his expression shifting from an unreadable one to something much more sinister. All this time, you've been thinking I was the one behind everything. But the truth, Muni, is that you wanted to escape, and I couldn't allow that. I've always known what you were capable of. I knew you would remember eventually, but I needed to keep you close until you did. Because, my dear wife, you've always been the dangerous one. Muni took a step back, her mind racing. What are you talking about? Xander's eyes gleamed in the dim light. You've forgotten more than just the accident, Muni. You've forgotten the months leading up to it. You wanted to leave me because you thought you could get away with what you did, but I knew what you're hiding. Muni shook her head, panic rising in her chest. What are you saying? What did I do? Xander took a step closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You didn't just try to leave me, Muni. You tried to eliminate me first. Muni's blood turned to ice. No, that can't be true. Xander nodded slowly. You poisoned me, Muni. Little by little. You thought I wouldn't notice, but I did. That's why you drove off that night. Because you failed, and you were afraid of being discovered. And now you've conveniently forgotten everything. But I haven't. I've been waiting for you to remember. Muni felt the room spinning. Her world was unraveling, and she didn't know what to believe anymore. Had she really done what Xander claimed? Or was this another one of his twisted lies? As Xander stepped closer, Muni realized with a sickening clarity that she was no longer sure of who she really was. Muni's head swam with the weight of Xander's words. His accusations cut deep, like shards of glass embedding themselves in her thoughts. Her heart pounded, and her breath grew shallow as he continued to close the distance between them. Muni backed away slowly, her mind racing. His words rang in her ears. Memories of that night flashed in her mind, her hands shaking as she drove, the rage she had felt, and then the crash. But something wasn't right. Why couldn't she remember the weeks before that? Why did everything feel so twisted and surreal? She shook her head violently, trying to clear her thoughts. No, this isn't real. None of this makes sense. Xander smirked, stepping closer. You think you're innocent, don't you? That you're the victim here? His voice dripped with venom. But I've been with you every step of the way, waiting for you to remember what you did. And now that you do, I'll never leave. Muni's pulse raced as she backed into the corner of the room, trapped. But something deep inside her screamed that this couldn't be real. She remembered the car crash, but there were gaps in her memory that didn't add up. Xander had said she had tried to take his life. If that was the case, why hadn't she been arrested? And why hadn't anyone else mentioned this? Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through Muni's head, and she stumbled backward, gripping her temples. The room around her seemed to shift and distort. The walls bent inward, the furniture blaring, and the air felt heavy, suffocating. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Xander stood in front of her, smiling that eerie smile. You can't run from the truth anymore, Muni. Then everything stopped. The room went silent. The air stilled, and Xander was gone. Muni blinked, confused. She looked around wildly, her chest heaving. The room, no longer their home, was suddenly unfamiliar. The walls were white, and a cold, sterile smell filled the air. Gone were the familiar sounds of their neighborhood, replaced by the quiet hum of machinery. Her head throbbed as the truth began to unravel. A door creaked open, and a woman in a white coat entered the room. Muni, the woman said softly, her voice calm and professional. It's time for your medication. Muni blinked, her mind reeling. Well, where am I? She stammered. The woman gave her a sympathetic smile. You're at St. Joseph's Mental Health Facility. You've been here for some time now. The air felt like it was being sucked out of Muni's lungs. What? No, no, this can't be right. Xander. Where is Xander? The nurse's expression softened, a hint of sadness in her eyes. Muni, we've had this conversation many times. Xander has been gone for nearly a year. Muni shook her head violently. No, that's not true. He was here with me just now. He was talking to me. He told me I poisoned him, that I tried to eliminate him, but he survived. The nurse sighed gently, approaching Muni with care. Muni, that's part of your delusion. Xander didn't survive. You succeeded in poisoning him. That's why you've been here. Muni's world began to shatter. Flashes of memories bombarded her all at once. Xander collapsing after eating the poisoned food she had prepared, her frantic escape, the car crash that followed. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. Xander had passed away, and he had been gone long before she woke up in the hospital. The memories that followed weren't real. The hospital, the accident, his presence, none of it had happened. She had created it all in her mind. Tears streamed down Muni's face as the weight of her actions settled in. No, no, she whispered, collapsing to the floor. Her hands trembled as she covered her face, sobbing uncontrollably. I eliminated him. The nurse knelt beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. You are not well, Muni, but we're here to help you. Muni looked up, her eyes filled with horror. He's been gone this whole time, and I've been talking to him? The nurse nodded gently. You've been experiencing hallucinations, a way for your mind to cope with the guilt. It's a common reaction in cases like yours. Muni's body shook as the enormity of what she had done consumed her. Her perfect marriage, the man she thought had betrayed her, had been nothing more than a shadow of her broken psyche. As the nurse helped her up, Muni felt numb. The walls around her were no longer the comforting home she thought she had lived in, but the stark, cold reality of her confinement. Her mind had betrayed her, weaving a web of lies to shield her from the awful truth. She was not a victim. She was the monster in her own story. And now, she had no one left but herself. Hi fam, hope you enjoyed this story. Get ready for the untold story before the storm. Before Muni's life spiraled into chaos, there were hidden secrets deeper than anyone could imagine. Find out what role her husband played in all of this. The truth is just beginning to unfold. Only time will tell. Stay tuned for the prequel, Part 2, where the shocking answers lie. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss any of your favorite African folktales. Until next time, it's bye from us at Apenthene African Stories.